And good evening, I'm Tom Llamas. Tonight, questions are mounting after Hollywood icon Gene Hackman and his wife were found dead in their New Mexico home. Police say 95-year-old Hackman and 64-year-old Secy Arakawa had both been deceased for quite a while when their bodies were discovered yesterday afternoon. The investigation still in its early stages, but here's what we know tonight. Police say it appears Arakawa died first, and she was Hackman's main caretaker. Hackman was found in the mudroom with a cane nearby, and there was a bottle of spilled pills in the home. 2 dogs were alive, but one was dead, found inside of a crate. As their deaths remain shrouded in mystery, his life and career immortalized in more than 40 years in film. He's known for his roles in films like The French Connection, The Conversation, Unforgiven, The Firm, and Hoosiers, earning him the title as one of the hardest working men in show business. The tributes are pouring in from other Hollywood legends. Francis Ford Coppola, Morgan Freeman, and Clint Eastwood remembering Hackman as magnificent, incredibly gifted, and a dear friend. We're going to have more on his amazing career later in the show, but first we start with NBC's Dana Griffin, who has the latest on this investigation in New Mexico tonight.
Tonight, chilling new details in the death of legendary actor Gene Hackman and his wife of 34 years, Secy Arakawa.
You know, all I can say is they have been deceased for quite a while.
Their bodies found Wednesday afternoon after a groundskeeper called 911 after arriving at their Santa Fe, New Mexico home and seeing them through a window.
Are they moving at all?
No, dude, they're not moving. Just send somebody out here really quick.
Authorities are investigating the deaths as suspicious, but have already ruled out a carbon monoxide leak and say there were no obvious signs of foul play.
There was no indication of a struggle. There was no indication of anything that was missing from the home or disturbed.
When deputies arrived, they located the body of Hackman's 65-year-old wife in a bathroom located near the front door, which was open according to the warrant. Officers noted an orange bottle of prescription pills scattered on the countertop and a space heater near her head, which detectives say could indicate she fell abruptly to the ground. 95-year-old Hackman was found dead in a mudroom near the kitchen according to the warrant. It states his cane was next to him, indicating he may have fallen and was unable to get up. Deputies also found the couple's German Shepherd dead in her crate. The warrant says both Gene and Betsy's bodies showed signs of decomposition.
This is an investigation, so we're keeping everything on the table. You know, I think the autopsy is going to tell us a lot.
Okay, Dana Griffin joins us tonight from Santa Fe. Dana, we just heard it there, right? They're keeping everything on the table. What more do we know about the investigation into Hackman's death?
Well, Tom, we know that they have completed a preliminary autopsy, and they are waiting for official results from that autopsy and toxicology. They think this is going to help them to determine exactly what caused their deaths. And as you mentioned, they say this is an ongoing investigation, so they are looking at everything. They are taking some items out of the home to try to see if there could be any connection to possibly anything else. But as you mentioned, no foul play at this time. We have heard from the Hackman family releasing a statement. They say that the two will be sorely missed, and they are devastated by this loss. Tom? Dana Griffin joins us tonight from Los Angeles. Dana, we thank you so much for being. For more on the response to Gene Hackman and his wife's death, I'm joined tonight by Santa Fe Mayor Alan Weber. Mayor Weber, we thank you for joining the broadcast tonight. I know this is a sad time for your community. I do want to start with Gene Hackman's legacy in Santa Fe. What can you tell our viewers about why he chose to live there and how the community is remembering him tonight?
Yeah, thanks for remembering him with us. You know, I think the town of Santa Fe is a great place for people to come who may be global icons, huge stars, but when they are here in Santa Fe, they're just part of the community in a good way. Gene Hackman is remembered as somebody who fit in. He was gracious. He was friendly. He treated everybody well and with graciousness and respect. The same with Betsy. These are two people who have huge talent, gifts, global reputations, and yet here in Santa Fe, they're just down-to-earth people, part of the community. And I think that's part of what made Santa Fe attractive to them, that you could have your own business, you could have a company, you could have a restaurant, you could fit in, you can go out to dinner as part of our arts and culture community and feel welcome and not harassed or hounded by people looking out for celebrity. And that's part of Santa Fe's charm.
You know, so many people feel a connection to Gene Hackman because he was such a great movie star, such a great actor. He made great films, but the community there in Santa Fe obviously had a closer bond because of everything you just said. How is the community taking this loss tonight?
It's tough. It's pretty much the talk of the town. A lot of people are remembering him. They had different ways of connecting with him and his wife, whether it was through seeing him in restaurants that was their favorite haunt, going to Betsy's shop, seeing Gene Hackman out and about, and people just felt they were part of us. And everybody's got a favorite story, a favorite memory, a huge amount of fondness and affection for both of them, and a sense of community loss in a town that really has a lot of film and arts and culture stars. They were down-to-earth members of Santa Fe's community, and they're going to be remembered that way. And I think we'll continue to talk about how gracious and graceful they were as part of the Santa Fe community.
Death is never easy. This case, your law enforcement calling it, quote, suspicious. You guys don't think there's a criminal element. I know there's not a lot you can share about the investigation. Is there anything for certain you can tell our viewers who are fans, who love Gene Hackman? Are you guys certain it wasn't a crime here?
Well, the county sheriff is in charge of the investigation. City Fire was the first on the scene, and from everything I'm being told, they're still sifting through the evidence, and you heard about the early autopsy having been done. Until that work is completed, I think we're all just going to be shaking our heads and wondering how this happened, and focusing more on the loss than the cause.
Just like the rest of the country. Okay, Mayor Weber, we thank you for your time tonight. We thank you for joining Top Story.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
We do want to turn now to politics and the high-stakes meeting in Washington between President Trump and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. The two world leaders holding critical talks on Ukraine ahead of President Zelensky's White House visit tomorrow. NBC's Lester Holt sat down with the Prime Minister and spoke with him about comments President Trump has made on Russia's President Putin and the future of the EU.
Tonight, President Trump and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer reaffirming the country's enduring special relationship.
In a moment of real danger around the world, this relationship matters more than ever.
A high-stakes meeting as talks start to end the war in Ukraine. President Trump saying he's confident any deal with Russia's President Putin will last.
I don't believe he's going to violate his word. You know, it's trust and verify. Let's call it that.
And he was asked, can he get back Ukrainian territory that Russia seized?
A lot of the sea line has been taken. We're going to see if we can get it back, or get a lot of it back for Ukraine, if that's possible.
While also expressing some doubt. President Trump saying Ukraine's President Zelensky will come to the White House tomorrow to sign a deal giving the U.S. access to Ukraine's rare earth minerals, to pay back the U.S. for billions of dollars in aid to Ukraine. And the president was pressed about his previous comments calling Zelensky a dictator.
Do you still think that Mr. Zelensky is a dictator?
Did I say that? I can't believe I said that. Next question.
Hello. Prime Minister, how are you? We spoke with the Prime Minister moments after that White House meeting.
If I understand President Trump correctly, he says, let's do a peace deal regarding Ukraine first and then come back and visit the area of security guarantees. That doesn't sound like what you came here to tell him.
Well, let me first start by saying that President Trump has changed the conversation on Ukraine. And so it's created this opportunity, and we all hope that that deal is forthcoming. What's most important, I think, is that it's a lasting deal, that it's not just a temporary pause. And to be lasting, it's important that the deal is defended, that Putin knows he can't go again. And that's why I've been concerned to ensure that on the European side, all countries, including the United Kingdom, step up. And I've said that we are willing to play our full part in any security guarantees, and also obviously talking to the president about what that might look like.
You said in a news conference today that you're all in, that you're ready to go to put boots on the ground. What's your larger message about what the UK is willing to do and advance forward in the name of peace?
The first element is a wider argument, which is that Europe and the United Kingdom need to do more in our own defence. And that's why this week I announced the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the Cold War. That's the macro argument about the defence of the continent. In relation to Ukraine, I do think that it's important that European countries play a leading part in any security guarantees. And that's why I've said that the UK would put boots on the ground if necessary.
The president speaks positively of Russia, of Vladimir Putin. He's the one that ultimately he'll have to negotiate with. Do you trust Vladimir Putin as a good faith bargainer?
Well, look, I think President Trump is quite right to have brought these proceedings to talks, because we've had 3 long years now. There have been many people killed and injured in this. I was in Kyiv just a few weeks ago, and I was in the burns unit of a hospital. I saw firsthand the human scars that those on the front line and actually civilians are bearing. So we need this peace. My concern is that we know historically that Putin might go again.
Sounds like you don't trust him.
Well, look, I mean, I think that he has ambitions. I think he will go again, and I've made my views on President Putin pretty clear on a number of occasions.
And Lester joins us live now, fresh off that interview there in Washington. Lester, you know, I kind of know, or at least I think I know where you were going with those questions. Do you believe, from talking to the Prime Minister, that he believes President Trump will get the deal done with Ukraine and NATO?
I think he's bullish. I think that's the word I would use. You know, he talked about the fact that President Trump has really kind of brought this conversation back into the forefront, the conversation of peace in Ukraine. So I think he's giving him credit there. He downplayed to a certain extent some of the differences between how they reach a place where Russia is no longer a threat, that it would abide by whatever is negotiated. But I think his whole point right now is that this is in play. This is a conversation that's happening. Let's everyone move. He plans to meet with European allies very soon to talk about, beefing up their militaries and the role that they might play in any peace deal.
You know, your interview and the news conference that preceded it are really the first times Americans are seeing this new prime minister from the UK. He's quite the diplomat. He was able to sort of have some tough talk, but also compliment the president calling him a tough negotiator as well, and laughing throughout that news conference. What is your sense here, the sort of the relationship between these two world leaders?
Well, he's certainly a gifted politician and a gifted leader. I think one of the interesting things was how he set the table for this trip. If you think about it, the UK he announced only seems like a few days ago that the UK would spend 2.5% of its GDP in its own defense. That, of course, has been a big issue for President Trump. And then he comes today hand-carrying an invitation from King Charles for a state visit. This would be a rare second state visit for a leader in this case. So he certainly laid a foundation of goodwill and trust. And I think that might have really set the tone in a big way today.
Lester Holt with that big interview for us tonight. Lester, we thank you for joining the show. Breaking late tonight, a federal judge ordering the Trump administration to rescind a memo that directed the mass firing of probationary employees, which are workers in the first or second year of their jobs. The judge ruling that the memo issued by the Office of Personnel Management was likely illegal. The ruling tonight does not reinstate dismissed employees, but it will prevent future firings from taking place. And NBC News tonight has another big exclusive interview, this time with President Trump's Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy. The administration under fire after a recent slew of aviation crashes and close calls. Tonight, the secretary announcing new measures that he says will make flying safer, and it starts with increasing the number of air traffic controllers. Here's Tom Costello with that interview.
It's great to be here.
On his first visit to the FAA's Air Traffic Control Academy in Oklahoma City.
He's coming to the other runway.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy got a hands-on look at the high-stakes training to become a controller.
Runway 28 left, clear to land.
His visit comes as the NTSB and FAA are investigating a string of aviation crashes and close calls in Washington, D.C., Nome, Alaska, Toronto, and this week's close call on the runway at Chicago Midway Airport.
Southwest 2504 going around.
Is there anything that connects them, or is it the possibility of human error?
They're all very unique. But I do think in all of them, and again, not exclusively, not 100%, but a majority probably of the errors go to the pilots, right? There's some pilot error at play in each of these incidents.
The NTSB chair says it appears the private jet pilot who taxied in front of a Southwest plane had failed to follow controller instructions to hold and wait. FlexJet, the owner of the company, says it's conducting its own investigation. Any action to rectify and ensure the highest safety standards will be taken. Your message after the Midway incident was, if you don't listen to or don't adhere to air traffic control, your pilot's license should be yanked?
Hell yes.
And says Duffy, Congress will need to spend billions very soon to upgrade America's antiquated ATC technology.
If this takes 4 years or 5 years, it won't happen. And then if it fails and people get hurt or people die, everyone's going to be disappointed.
Meanwhile, the FAA is still short some 3,000 to 4,000 controllers and struggling to hire and train enough to replace those who leave. The academy is not easy. 35% of the students here quit, fail, or wash out. Another 20% wash out once they're on the job.
It's a stressful job, but you also need to be able to control your nerves.
After hearing from students, Duffy today announced steps to attract what he calls the best and brightest, fast-tracking students with the highest application test scores, accelerating the hiring process, and a 30% pay hike for Academy students.
$160,000 a year, 3 years after you graduate. Come on, so young people, check it out.
All right, we thank Tom Costello for that. Next tonight, to President Trump's immigration crackdown. Just over 5 weeks into his second term, Trump made ramping up border enforcement a signature campaign promise. And tonight, the Department of Homeland Security is touting new immigration arrest numbers. Here they are. DHS announcing they've arrested more than 20,000 undocumented immigrants in just 1 month. That total more than 100% higher than the average monthly arrest under former President Biden during fiscal year 2024. And the Trump team signaling they're just getting started, revealing plans to reopen Delaney Hall, an immigration detention center in Newark with a 1,000-bed capacity. It's the first to open during his second term, and it's 6 times larger than the other facilities in the Garden State. The new moves come after Trump's reported frustration with the rate at which his government is deporting undocumented immigrants. Just last week, the administration demoted the acting director of ICE, Caleb Vitello. Yet questions are growing tonight about who they are targeting. President Trump and his allies have promised to prioritize migrants with prior criminal histories, but detention data obtained by NBC News shows more than 1,800 migrants without a criminal conviction or pending charges have also been detained. And tonight, another battlefront is emerging in the fight over immigration, schools. Oklahoma is one of several states considering requiring proof of citizenship for all public school students. Our Gabe Gutierrez spoke to the state's Republican governor, now wading into the debate, saying the policy turns pupils into political pawns.
Immigrants are welcome here.
After weeks of protests, today,
suspend all activity related to immigration.
A contentious school board meeting.
Why is this board to say to God that people or children are trash?
We're standing up with you, and so glad you're standing with President Trump.
Last month, state board members here approved a proposal that would require public school districts in Oklahoma to ask parents for proof of citizenship before enrolling their kids. Ryan Walters is the state superintendent and a staunch supporter of President Trump.
Do you believe that local and state officials should help enforce federal immigration law?
Absolutely. They should be following every order, every directive from the Trump administration.
A landmark 1982 Supreme Court decision held that children are entitled to public education, regardless of their immigration status. But in addition to Oklahoma, at least 4 other states have seen measures introduced in their legislatures trying to restrict undocumented children from attending public school, or that would require proof of citizenship.
Are you scared? ¿Tienes miedo?
This woman in Oklahoma City is undocumented and asked us to conceal her face. She says every child should have the opportunity to go to class, but she's now terrified of her son being rounded up. Walters, the superintendent, is now facing backlash from within his own party.
Do you support it?
No, I don't.
Governor Kevin Stitt, a Republican who says he supports Trump's immigration policies, argues Walters is going too far.
I've never heard President Trump say, I'm going to go pick on kids. I've heard him talk about criminal elements and get them out of our country.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez joins us tonight live from Oklahoma City. So, Gabe, what are the next steps here for this proposal, and has President Trump weighed in?
Hi there, Tom. Well, this proposal is now set to go before the Republican-controlled legislature here. But even if lawmakers do sign off on it, the governor, who we just spoke to, says that he will veto it. As for President Trump weighing in, he hasn't weighed in on this specific proposal. But I have been speaking with White House officials who say that sweeping executive order at this time does not apply to school lunches for undocumented kids. But this is certainly an issue that will be debated in the months to come. Tom.
Yeah, and if this happens in other parts of the country, we know the governor has that veto power there. But given the fact that the Trump administration has been challenged legally for trying to conduct enforcement in sensitive locations, whether they be schools or hospitals or churches, has there been other legal pushback?
Well, certainly, Tom. When it comes to immigration, there is almost always legal pushback. But I mentioned in the story that, this all goes back to that 1982 Supreme Court decision. And we expect there to be legal challenges here. And some of these Republicans, including the state superintendent here, he expects this case and others like it to go all the way to the Supreme Court, Tom.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez there for us in Oklahoma City, where this is all happening. Thanks, Gabe. Still ahead tonight, new developments in the Menendez brothers case. The action the California governor is taking and their legal team trying to cut their sentences short. One of their cousins joins us live in a moment with how the brothers are reacting to the news. Plus, Chicago police say a serial killer had stalked their streets, killing multiple people. More chilling, he was just 17 years old. How they caught him. And another state now seeing measles cases. What you need to know. Stay with us. Top story just getting started on this Thursday night. We're back now with the latest in the Menendez brothers case. California Governor Gavin Newsom yesterday ordering a risk assessment in the event Eric and Lyle Menendez are released, in addition to weighing a commutation application for the two men convicted of killing their parents back in 1989. Newsom saying there is, quote, no guarantee of an outcome, but the Menendez family saying they are beyond thrilled at the news. For more on these developments, I do want to bring in Eric and Lyle's first cousin, Anna Maria Baralt. Anna Maria, we thank you for joining Top Story tonight. When was the last time the family spoke to Lyle and Eric, and where are their minds right now? Are they hopeful?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. And we speak to them all the time. We're in constant contact with Lyle and Eric, and they are cautiously optimistic, as all of us are. I do want to stress that the governor's office was very clear that there are no guarantees in this process, and this is a really rigorous process that they use in order to evaluate risk. But we are hopeful, and so are they.
If they were to be released, what would their life be like outside of prison?
That is hard to say. I mean, it's really interesting because they, of course, are not celebrities, and yet they are so well known. So I hope that they will be able to have some sort of privacy if and when they are released. I do know that they are very anxious to continue their work. They're very passionate about getting the voices of survivors out there and to take away the shame and stigma of those who have been abused in their lives and who have childhood trauma.
So your family is looking at three separate avenues for re-examining this case, right? There's the commutation of the sentence, a resentencing, and then a new trial. The Los Angeles DA has already rejected the idea of a new trial. Of the avenues left, what do you see as the best chance for your cousins to be released?
Well, I want to push back a little bit in that he doesn't have the power to deny the habeas petition, right? The district attorney's office came out in opposition of it. That doesn't mean that goes away. The Lyle and Eric's attorneys will still be able to argue in front of a judge for the habeas petition. So I don't want to take that off the table.
Okay.
As far as the resentencing versus the clemency, I am actually not sure how those pieces fit together now that the governor has involved himself. I don't know whether it will usurp the resentencing process. That would be a question for the legal team, but hopefully something is going to get them out. That's all we know.
You know, as we mentioned, and you sort of alluded to there, the LA County DA, Nathan Hackman, has asked the court to reject the brothers' newest petition for a new trial in their murder case. That's a little different from the commutation. He's citing issues with the alleged new evidence in the case, specifically the ones of sexual abuse against Lyle and Eric's father. Your family has called that decision, quote, an abhorrent dismissal of abuse evidence. What's your response to the decision?
Well, again, it's his position. It was pretty alarming to see him just out of hand dismiss the letter that was written by Eric to Andy. I know that that's real. And so for him to just dismiss it out of hand was pretty alarming. It was also alarming to see him dismiss the testimony of the accounts of Roy Rosello, who is an entirely different third party who came in and corroborated that kind of behavior. So I'm not sure what made him come to those conclusions. But again, those are things for the lawyers to argue in front of a judge.
You spoke a little bit about the governor. Are you optimistic after hearing him on that podcast? I mean, how do you guys interpret what he was saying?
Cautiously optimistic, for sure. In our family, we tend to temper hope a little bit. This has been a 35-year journey for us. But we are so encouraged simply that he is stepping in and that he is taking a look and that he is showing leadership and courage in order to move things forward. And we're very grateful. And if you look at the components of what it takes for risk assessment, what that looks like, that's pretty hopeful for us because Lyle and Eric have done the work. They have educated themselves. They have gone through the programs. They have really led tremendous lives of purpose for decades.
Before you go, and I do have to ask you this, because I think there's going to be viewers out there who maybe don't follow this case as closely as others have had. But for people who sort of know this at the surface level, and they say these two brothers killed their parents in cold blood and have been in prison for it and were convicted of it, why should they be released? What do you say to those people?
For one thing, I want to remind anybody in that position that Lyle and Eric, if they were released today, are not getting away with anything. They have spent 35 years incarcerated. I would also urge them to understand that we have evolved as a culture to understand the effects of trauma, of childhood trauma, and on the effects of the brain, and on the effects of actions related to that trauma. I would also encourage them to look at what they have done with their lives. They were youthful offenders, right? The law in California now understands that people under the age of 26, their brains have not fully formed and that they act in ways that are not fully formed adults. So if that law had been in place when they were sentenced, they would have been out.
Ana Maria Baralt, cousin of both Eric and Lyle Menendez, we're going to be talking to you in the future on any developments that happen with your cousin's case. We thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
We want to turn now to some chilling new details of an alleged teenage serial killer in Chicago. Police say they've now connected the suspect who was first arrested for a shooting in 2020 to 6 killings and several attempted murders. His victims apparently randomly selected. NBC Shaquille Brewster reports.
Tonight, Chicago police detailing how they connected a string of 6 murders in 2020 to an alleged teen serial killer.
It's difficult to comprehend how anyone could easily take someone's life, and especially so many, in 1 year.
Authorities say Antonio Reyes, who was just 17 at the time, was put behind bars in December 2020 for a shooting that took place in June of that year. Investigators recovered and processed the weapon, and they say found casings matching that weapon to other seemingly random shootings.
None of these people had ever met Antonio Reyes before, and there's no reason to suspect Antonio Reyes had any reason to target them.
Reyes allegedly targeting victims who prosecutors say were just going about their daily lives.
One victim was killed when he went to the gas station to buy a pop early one evening. Another victim was sitting in a parked car with a friend on Palm Sunday afternoon when he was shot and killed. Another victim's only crime was taking his family to buy a new puppy one afternoon.
Police say Reyes had a fairly significant social media footprint that they used to connect him with the shooting of 26-year-old Luis Davalos Garcia that led to his initial arrest. Garcia's father, also named Luis, said his son was working hard to make something of himself.
He went out there and, hustle for what he wanted. He had this gift was able to talk to people and become friends instantly.
His family still reeling.
Heartbroken. That hasn't changed at all. Me and my wife are devastated, and there's not a day that passes that we don't remember our son.
Many of Reyes' other alleged victims, young men ranging from 16 to 30 years old. Reyes facing attempted murder charges for some even younger.
3 attempted murder charges are for children between the ages of 3 and 9.
And while behind bars, prosecutors say the violence has continued.
He allegedly tried to kill his cellmate with a shank and has charges pending there as well.
After Reyes' initial 2020 arrest, the Chicago Tribune reported his attorney argued there was no video of the shooter's face and dismissed a social media video of him with the gun, saying there was no way to know if it was the murder weapon. He's pleaded not guilty in that case. Court records for that case were not immediately available, but it appears the case remains open. Reyes has pled not guilty to all charges. An attorney for him could not immediately be reached for comment.
It's a good day, but you know, it's a bittersweet situation.
Justice will be served, and that is a good thing. But we have a lot more work to do.
Those poor family members. Shaq Brewster joins us now from Chicago. Shaq, you know, at the top of your story there, you said these murders happened in 2020. Do we know why it took 5 years to sort of link all these murders to one man?
You know, Tom, investigators didn't explain the time that it took, but they did say that detectives worked, quote, tirelessly to come to answers to this case. It was clear that they were clearly trying to build this case together. They not only had video evidence, they had that weapon that was recovered in 2020. They had witnesses and tips that they say they got from members of the community. And they also said that social media was a key part to this case. When you look back at the initial shooting that took place in 2020, it was the reason why this suspect was behind bars in the first place. In some court hearings, you heard prosecutors mention that there was a video that showed the suspect with a gun. His attorneys say that there was no way to link that gun to the actual murder that took place, but that was a crucial part of linking the suspect to the timing of at least one of the shootings, investigators say. But you know, many of these families saying that they've been waiting for updates, waiting for answers on the shootings, on the murders of their loved ones for many years now, and they're at least relieved to get some answers and some clarity on what happened. Tom?
Shaq Brewster for us from Chicago. Shaq, we thank you for that. Coming up next, China's new military might. The images of the mysterious Navy ship China is building. Our new reporting from Keir Simmons that it could be a nuclear-powered supercarrier to rival anything in America's Navy. The pictures coming up, and the new celebrity space race, the famous names now set to launch into space. Stay with us. We're back now with Top Stories Newsfeed, and tonight, controversial influencer Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan are back in the U.S. The brothers, who faced numerous charges, including sex trafficking and rape in Romania, landed in Fort Lauderdale today after Romanian prosecutors lifted a travel ban. The Tates have denied all allegations of wrongdoing, but today, Governor Ron DeSantis says he was not aware they were coming.
The reality is no, Florida is not a place where you're welcome. With that type of conduct in the air. And I don't know how it came to this. We were not involved. We were not notified.
Florida's Attorney General says he is launching a preliminary investigation into the brothers. And an update on the deadly measles outbreak. Kentucky, the latest state with a reported case. 145 people now sickened across several states, 9 of them, including three new cases in New Jersey. In almost all cases, all the states, the people are unvaccinated. According to local health officials, the epicenter remains in West Texas, where one child has died. Some A-list celebrities getting into the space race set to join an all-female crewed space flight. Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin announcing Katy Perry, Gayle King, and Bezos' fiancée, Lauren Sanchez, will be on its next space flight. They'll be joined by a former NASA engineer, a research scientist, and a film producer. No official date on takeoff, but it will be sometime this spring. And a big change could be coming to Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune. Sony says it's shopping around for the highest streaming bidder to air the 2 popular game shows, which still draw in roughly 7 million viewers each a night, according to Nielsen. Sony says starting in September, the streamer would be able to air new episodes the day after their first run and air simultaneously when syndication rights expire in 2028. Okay, we want to move now to China, rapidly expanding military capability. NBC News obtained satellite imagery that may show the country is building nuclear-powered super carriers, matching the U.S.'s most advanced aircraft carrier technology. The Chinese embassy in Washington telling Top Story late tonight that China has always adhered to the strategy of self-defense and does not engage in an arms race with any other country. But as our chief international correspondent Keir Simmons reports, many experts see this latest development as a looming threat.
As China increasingly rivals American sea power, this, its latest aircraft carrier, the Type 003, also called the Fujian. Tonight, there are new satellite images that analysts believe show an engineering prototype for an aircraft carrier. The configuration does not match the Fujian or any other Chinese carrier. Analysts say that suggests that China is moving forward with efforts to build a nuclear-powered supercarrier.
We think this is them testing equipment and layouts for the upcoming Type 04 carrier.
The images taken between April and January at Dalian shipyards in northeast China. NBC News spoke to 5 experts with a deep understanding of the Chinese military, all assessing these 2 tracks, which appear to be the catapult launch system for aircraft, are a distinctive sign that China is beginning to move forward with the construction of a supercarrier.
Their current carrier, the Type 03, has 3 electromagnetic catapults, 2 up front and 1 at the waist. The general consensus is that their new carrier will have 4 catapults, like the Gerald Ford and other U.S. carriers. So it'll have 2 up front and 2 at the waist.
A nuclear supercarrier would match America's latest generation of aircraft carriers, the Gerald Ford class, enabling China to project power across the Pacific and closer to America.
China Coast Guard 14608.
China flexing its muscles again this week, renewing live fire drills around Taiwan. And a recent Department of Defense report estimated China's defense budget is 40 to 90% more than it publicly admits. That would match US defense spending in 2024. The Trump administration makes no secret that it sees China as a priority. The Secretary of Defense telling NATO leaders they should shoulder more of the security burden in Europe to free up US firepower, saying,
"We also face a peer competitor in the communist Chinese, with the capability and intent to threaten our homeland and core national interests in the Indo-Pacific. The U.S. is prioritizing deterring war with China in the Pacific."
China already has a larger navy than the United States and is matching many of America's technological advances and in some ways surpassing them. This small carrier is unlike any ship in any other navy. Some experts believe it is the world's first bespoke drone carrier. One purpose for its naval capability, Beijing says, to protect China's expanded trade links. For example, in 2023, NBC News visited a massive new civilian port in Peru. Could we one day see a ship from the People's Liberation Navy dock in this port?
Well, this port is oriented to commercial activities.
But China's determination to dominate the Pacific sits more than uncomfortably with America's long-standing role there. Experts say these new images suggest China's first nuclear supercarrier is a long way off, perhaps 5 years away or more. The US still has time for that long-talked-about pivot to Asia and for diplomacy.
And with that, Keir Simmons joins Top Story tonight. So, Keir, what is China saying about why it's escalating their defense capabilities?
Well, Tom, China has accused the US of, quote, provocations and has warned of a conflict caused by American actions. President Xi has said he aims to defend territorial sovereignty and to protect stability. But, Tom, here is a truism in defense thinking that hopefully doesn't apply here. One side may think it is taking defensive actions. The other side may think those actions are equally offensive, and that's how 2 sides can stumble into conflict.
And Keir, as you report on this buildup from China, here in the U.S., there's been so much coverage, especially here on Top Story, about what's happening with Elon Musk and the new Trump administration and DOGE and trying to cut out government waste and government spending. Is that hitting the Pentagon and our direct military spending when it comes to aircraft carriers and or weaponry?
Yeah, look, DOGE is looking at defense spending, but compared with the amount of defense spending, well, it may be kind of a drop in the ocean. I mean, stand by for some mind-bending numbers, Tom. The U.S. spends almost $1 trillion on defense. U.S. debt is $36 trillion, and so that is putting a limit on how much more the U.S. can spend, and it has to be approved by Congress. So here's what the Trump administration is trying to do, and here's why it's so difficult. It's trying to manage the crisis in the Middle East. It's trying to tackle the Ukraine-Russia conflict, and at the same time, it is trying to cut defense spending, or rationalize, if you like, while turning and facing the challenge of China. It is an enormous challenge, Tom.
Keir Simmons for us tonight. Keir, we thank you for all your reporting. We do want to stay abroad and get a check of what else is happening around the world with Top Stories Global Watch. We start with President Trump saying he will revoke a deal that allows Venezuela to export oil to the U.S. despite sanctions. The license allowed Chevron to export Venezuelan crude oil, which accounts for nearly a quarter of Venezuelan oil exports. Trump canceling the Biden-era license because he says Venezuela had not met electoral conditions and was not accepting migrants fast enough. South Korean officials saying North Korea appears to have sent even more troops to Russia. Officials reporting more troops were sent after North Korean troops suffered heavy losses on the front lines. 10,000 to 12,000 troops arrived in Russia last fall. However, it's unclear how many more were sent this time. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that Ukrainian troops encountered North Korean troops during a skirmish in Kursk earlier this month. And in the Middle East, at least 13 people were injured when a bus rammed into civilians waiting at a bus stop in Pardes Hana-Karkar in northern Israel. Israeli police say the attacker was a Palestinian from the West Bank who was married to an Israeli citizen. Police reporting the suspect deliberately targeted civilians in that attack. One of the victims, a 17-year-old girl, was critically injured and is now sedated and ventilated, according to Israeli emergency services. Okay, coming up next, the terrifying moments in Cleveland. Look at this, a school bus going up in flames with 15 middle school students inside. How the driver of that bus saved their lives. That's next. We are back now with scary video out of Ohio. A bus carrying more than a dozen students engulfed in flames on its morning route. The driver now being called a hero for their quick thinking. NBC's Maggie Vespa picks it up from there.
Heart-stopping video of a near tragedy in Ohio.
This is going to be a bus vehicle on fire, unsure if it is occupied.
Showing massive flames and black smoke engulfing a Cleveland Heights school bus during its morning run to a local middle school. The district confirming there were 15 students on board.
Every child is accounted for. Every child's off the bus.
Firefighters hailing the bus's driver for acting quickly and getting everyone out safely.
It's just a blessing that the kids got out alive.
Witnesses saying they heard a loud explosion.
I saw the girl waiting for the bus. 2 to 3 minutes later, I heard a big boom.
City officials telling NBC News the fire appears to have been caused by a mechanical issue, with the superintendent saying in a letter to parents, flames broke out behind one of the rear wheels. The exact cause under investigation.
After about 5 minutes, it was all engulfed in flame, and it was just unbelievable.
This report from Ohio State Highway Patrol confirms the bus just passed its annual mandatory inspection on February 14th. The superintendent noting the entire fleet is now being re-inspected out of an abundance of caution. She writes the driver, who's asking not to be identified, credited annual evacuation drills for getting students out safely, adding, "I can't express how relieved I am that no one was hurt." Maggie Vespa, NBC News.
All right, that does it for us. We thank you for watching Top Story tonight. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. Stay right there. More news on the way.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.